Hello and good morning, friends. Today we're going to talk about low pressure cutoffs. What are they? How do they work? And how do you reset it? Because every now and again I come across one and people always call freaking out when they don't have water, and it's a really quick 5-second process to get water back to your house. So let's get into it. Low pressure cutoffs are used primarily to help prevent your well pump from running when water's not actively coming in. So how you can tell if you have a low pressure cutoff or not is if you have a little toggle switch on the actual pressure switch, which is the gray panel. We're going to look at that in a few seconds when we get inside. But the goal of this is so if you're running the well for too long, or if, for example, your well's not able to produce enough water, it will disconnect the power from the pump and prevent any kind of overuse of the pumping system and causing premature failure. This is also a good device in case you have a burst pipe. That way, instead of flooding your basement, it will disconnect the power, stopping your pump from running, thus saving most of your stuff in your basement. How it works, though, is usually once you get to about 25 psi, it'll disengage the contact plates, and then that will stop the pump from running. So let's go inside, take a look at what the pressure switch is, and how to reset it when it actually goes off. So what we're looking at right now is the pressure switch. Usually it'll have a little gray box just like this right on top. Inside of here, that'll tell us what our pressure setting is. For this particular one, it's a 30-50 switch. So what that means is when the air pressure in the pipe gets to 30 psi, that spring right in the back will push those contact plates in, which will connect the power from the home to the power to the pump, and then the pump will start to pump water into the house. Now, this system is basic. It's very basic. It's all analog. So what'll happen is at 30 psi, those contact plates engage, and then at 50 psi, the contact plates will disengage. A normal pressure switch will only have the on-off. This one has a low pressure cutoff, which is that little spring right in the back. The purpose of that spring is the on-off, right? So that's what controls the pressure setting in the house. So rotating it can increase or decrease the pressure. In this circumstance, we're not really going to deal with that. We're going to deal with how do you reset the pressure switch when the low pressure cutoff engages. And it's very simple. So all you're going to do is you're going to go over and you're going to lift up on that switch, and it will engage the pump and basically get the pump to start filling the tank. Once you get above 25 psi, 30 just to be safe, it'll take over on its own automatically, and then you're done. So what we're going to do now is I've got my hose hooked up to this. We're going to drain the tank, empty it to simulate that we had a loss of water. The loss of water can also happen if, for example, the house loses power. If you lose power, you might actually have to go in there and actually go and hold up that switch just to get the water to turn back on. So the next step, what we're going to do is we're going to turn off the power to the pump, drain the system, simulate a power loss, and I'm going to show you how to re-engage the system. All right, so we can see that we have no pressure in the pipe, so we're going to go ahead and we're going to close that back up, turn the power back on. Now, remember, while the power is on, the wires inside of this box, one side's going to be hot, so do not touch the inside of that box without that cover being on, right, or without the power being off. It's very important to make sure you don't shock yourself. When that cover's on, you're perfectly fine. Grabbing that toggle switch won't hurt you. So let's go turn the power back on, and I'm going to show you how to engage this pressure switch. All right, so power's back on, so one side of this switch is going to be live. But as you can see, we still don't have water. So the next step we need to do is when you reach down, grab this and hold it. And you might be able to hear the water flowing in. We can see that the pressure is starting to engage. So we hold this for just a few seconds, and then we let go, and now it is automatically going to continue to cycle itself. So we can see here that we're not actually touching anything, and it's continuing to build pressure in the system. You can see that we're over the 25 psi mark, and that's why it's able to continue on its own. At this point, now that you've reset it, everything should be back to where it belongs, right? If it continually starts to trip, there's two different possibilities that could be going on. First one is you might actually have an issue with the supply line. Like, let's just say you have a leak. If you have a leak, the water is not going to be able to get through fast enough to actually build any pressure in the system. If you know that it's not a leak, you might actually have a low yielding well problem. If your well does not yield enough water, you're not going to be able to build up enough pressure to get to 25 psi. So if you have a low yielding well, let's just say it's a 1-2 gallon per minute well, you're trying to use an exterior spigot, which is going to use 4 or 6 gallons per minute. Obviously, the well pumps and the pressure from the well is not going to be able to keep up, and that will cause that pressure switch to disengage. leave a comment below. Tell me, have you ever had to use a low pressure cutoff at your house? Do you have one currently installed? If you do, what kind of issues do you run into? How often are you resetting your system? These types of systems are not very common in our area. We don't usually have that many low pressure cutoffs. Usually if we're concerned about a low yielding well, we'll use a device called a pump saver, which will basically disengage the power to the pump if you're running the pump too aggressively, but it will automatically reset itself after 30 minutes, an hour, whatever particular device you get. These systems are the low pressure cutoffs that we're talking about right now, they're relatively inexpensive. They're not that much more difficult to install. They're the exact same process, you just screw it on. Where you run into issues is loss of water and people potentially not knowing how to return the water to the house. So a lot of the contractors in this area, they won't really use them, so that way they don't have to worry about those callbacks. There are a few out there that will put them in, but if you're installing one, it's very important to make sure that you put a sticker or something to tell you how to reset the system. That's why I wanted to make this video, to teach everybody how to reset it, and it's really not that hard. Doing this can save you hundreds of dollars, because I know plumbers are not cheap, and in my opinion, there's no point in paying somebody 200 bucks to come and hold a lever for 5 seconds. So we've kind of discussed some of the benefits of these low pressure cutoffs, and really the primary one is that if you have a large scale use of water, whether it's a burst pipe, a dry running well, maybe a low yield, it will save your pump from burning up. But in my opinion, the cons kind of outweigh those benefits because there's better systems. So in my opinion, the con of this is if you don't know that this exists and you don't know how to turn the water back on, especially if like this one is kind of tucked into a little corner where it's really kind of hard to see, maybe it's hard to reach, you're gonna get stuck having to pay somebody to pull that lever and recharge your water. Swapping them out's not that difficult, nor is it that expensive, but you know, in my opinion, it's easier just to switch them, especially if you're already gonna be replacing the tank. You may as well just switch it out for one that's not quite like that and get something a little bit better. The other main concern with this is if you're using an excessive volume of water, it's not smart. So let's just say, for example, you're washing your cars. Well, if you're washing your cars, somebody's flushing the toilet, maybe somebody's showering, if you drop that pressure below 25 PSI, guess what? Now you lose water, and whoever's in that shower is not gonna have a good day. There are potentials that this could go off while you're in the shower, and that can cause a lot of problems, right? It really depends on how low yielding your well is, but at least in our area, you're only gonna see it on low yielding wells. So it's very important to know what is your reserve in that well. And how do you figure out the reserve? Is you do a well yield test. We've already discussed that in previous episodes. I know that we covered a lot of ground on this one. I hope that you found this informative. If you gained any value out of this, or if you enjoyed this conversation, hit that like button, hit subscribe. I have more videos posted every day on the World of Well and Septic. I look forward to seeing you guys tomorrow.